and I'm gonna do it like this. See my flower holding my phone. And this is like not even a complete home. But none of you may understand what this is right here. This is a cemetery, right? And let me bridge this up. Yesterday I did something that I don't think anyone really knows. I went to visit my grandfather, excuse me. I went to visit my grandfather, and I promised myself the first time that when we had his funeral, we drove to the cemetery, that I would remember the road to his grave. And I got there to the cemetery and I couldn't remember the road to his grave. So I had to go to the office and ask the location of my grandfather, which I can't explain how that felt for this woman to pull out a map and highlight where my grandfather is now located. So, yesterday I celebrated the transition of my grandfather, sunk my bare feet into the earth which he now rests in. 6 months ago, I watched him die, but only physical, because I promise you, he still lives inside of me. I hear him speak to me. He always guides me. He always guides me. Has had high standards for me and my family. He taught me never to surrender, never to surrender, never to surrender to defeat or anything that couldn't take me higher. My grandfather, who was an amazing man, he taught me never to surrender to defeat, but we surrender. We surrender to video hoes. We surrender to alcohol. We surrender to forgetting that education is supposed to elevate while you send your children to school. We surrender to the lies that they feed us. We surrender to hopelessness. We surrender to conquering the dreams of everybody else except our own. We surrender as if we weren't made unique and it was an obligation for me to be like someone else instead of me being like myself. I said we surrender as if this might sometimes held no purpose and you would hate to listen to whatever I had to say because too many times you're not listening to what people have to say. We surrender to failure as if falling didn't make us stronger. We surrender to disconnection as if the wind doesn't speak to us, as if the sun doesn't shine for us, as if the moon doesn't teach us. We surrender to letting our youth die and they just become conversations, news, conversations, something to talk about at work. What are you doing? We surrender to not doing. I said, we surrender to not doing. My grandfather used to say, if you have a problem, fix it. And as a man, he never said, tell me the details in between. He said, if you have a problem, fix it. How many of us fixed it? We surrender to dwelling on the details instead of taking that step, taking that leap and flying to make the change. We surrender to the pain that lies in our eyes, so we hide. We surrender to hiding. I want to know who you are, and I'm pretty sure you want to know who you are. We surrender. We surrender to too many things instead of just letting be and flying. I want you to fly. You take one thing from me tonight. Understand, it is an obligation for you to live before you die. It is an obligation for you to live before you die. It is an obligation for you to live before you die. And if you do not understand what that means, I dare you to sit down on a rooftop, naked with the sun, with the winds, and let God speak to you. Because if you don't know, it will teach you. And I tell you, surrender to his light, surrender to love, surrender to living. Those are the only things you surrender to, things that will elevate you and allow you to live before you die. I thank you all for listening.